Hello everyone. This is Sayed Tabriz, host for today. Firstly, thank you all for joining in today for our session. So let us quickly go through the lineup for today's session. So first up, we'll have Ishan sir speaking, and he'll be followed by uh, Abhijit, and then later it will be carried on by Bhargav. Can I please request Ishan to take over the session?
Hello, am I audible?
Yeah, you are.
Okay, so hello everybody. My name's Ishan, and I'm, as you know, like all of us actually BMS IT alumni students, and I was from the 16 batch, 2020 batch actually. So I just passed out like a year ago, and right now I'm working in AWS as a cloud support associate. So, as I understand, we have a range. Okay, someone has raised their hand. How does that work?
Sorry, maybe you can continue. Maybe that was a mistake. We'll take
All
all
right.
the queries at the end.
Uh, Okay, so as I understand, all of you, like we have a multitude of students from ranging from the first year till the pre-final year. So I'm gonna start off with like the basics of coding. How can you start off with what you need to look into and concentrate on? And Abhijit will carry on to the more complicated stuff after that. All right, so this is in considering in mind people who have no idea about coding as well, because as you know, a very major part of placements is coding. Now you have your coding in your first round, which is your aptitude round, as well as there you can be asked to write down random pieces of code during your interviews as well. All right, so you need to understand how to code. Thing is, you have your lab subjects and you can always get through them by bugging up codes, right? But that won't really help you when it comes to placement because the questions are very random. Also, considering you get a job as a developer, mugging up is just going to make it worse for you. So to start off, like how would you start off coding? All right, so you can see there's no hard and fast method of learning coding as such. Now you can even learn coding on YouTube, or you can take some course on some online website. There are various ways. You can even literally Google, get different websites, and learn coding. So from a placement point of view, I would really suggest, if for people who have no experience in coding and want to start coding, from placement point of view, I would suggest that you really learn Python. All right. So Python is a language from placement point of view. It would be very simple for you to go ahead with solving the problems because of the variety of the inbuilt libraries that they have. All right. Half your work will be done due to the way the language is structured. If you already know languages like Java, C, C++, I'm not telling you have to learn Python. Okay, you can continue working on those, and you can definitely do this as good as people who know Python as well in the placement. So it's not a matter of one language being better than the other. It's just a matter of what you're comfortable with. I'm just suggesting Python for people who have no idea and want to start off coding right now, as it is easier to learn in a shorter amount of time, and that's it. There's nothing fundamentally different or better about the language. But one thing, so this is only when it comes to coding. All right, going ahead, like when you get a job or something after placements, then again it depends on what kind of job you get, because Python is very rarely used in the normal development jobs that you have. All right, Python is more used more in the data science and ML fields. Whereas in the normal development fields, you have languages like Java, C++, sometimes React, Angular, and all that. So, but that we should discuss about that later. So, starting off, my first suggestion would be to people who have no idea about coding and want to start off with coding. I would really suggest you learn Python, as it would help you at least from the placement point of view. All right, because from the job point of view, you can always learn it later. You'll be trained. So that's a completely different scenario here. But strictly speaking, from the placement point of view, I think Python is a good way to go if you're just starting off. Next, where and how would you learn it? As I said, you have many resources. I can maybe uh, link up with Syed later and send him some resources which he can share with you people if it's possible. So, but the most important part is that you practice it. So I think many of you know there are like really famous platforms like HackerRank and HackerEarth where you get a variety of questions with variety of difficulties, and a majority of those types of questions are what you will be asked in your placements. So if you can solve one question on this platform within like 10 to 15 minutes and you can do it consistently, I think you're good to go. You can really ace your coding part in the placements. But you need to really be consistent and practice it. So the main thing about coding that you need to remember is first, you need to understand the question. All right, the question, it won't be a straightforward question. It'll generally be in the sort of form of a story, or a big really big paragraph with an example which I still have trouble understanding, if I'm being honest. So your main and the most important part is to understand the question and the requirements. Now, you can have questions saying that, you take an input, a random sentence from a user, and you find the number of times a specific vowel reoccurs or specific consonant, or find the total number of vowels and consonants. Now, this is like the most basic and simple question you can have. Now, your first job is to understand what the question is and what you're supposed to do. So once you understand what you're supposed to do, you need to think about how you're going to do it. You need to formulate a logic. Now, this logic, as of yet, don't formulate in the form of a code. Just think of how you would do it manually if you were given a sentence. So you would basically check letter by letter. If a letter is a vowel, you would increase one in the vowel side. If a letter is a consonant, you would add one to the number of consonants. And then in the end, you would just print it. So now that is your logic which you've come up with to solve the question. So once you've come up with this logic, then you need to implement it in the code. Now your logic, the first part of your logic was to go letter by letter. So you need to figure out how you write a line of code that would check the whole sentence letter by letter. Then the next part of your logic was to see whether it's a vowel or a consonant. So your next piece of code will be to check every letter that you've iterated through. And then the last piece of logic was to increment the number of vowels or consonant based on what it is. So your last piece of code again will be that. So this way, if you divide your code according to the logic, it'll be simpler for you and less overwhelming. Because if you just look at it from a whole, like, just stare at it and see how big the question is, you're going to get overwhelmed, you're going to panic, and that's not good. Okay. Because in placements, you'll always be on a time crunch when you're coding. Because the coding, no matter whether it's a separate round or part of your aptitude test, you'll always have a time crunch. Time is very less. They give you like, probably 10 to 15 minutes per coding question. And given that, consider, let's say your aptitude test was really bad, you didn't know half the questions, that's just going to affect your ability to think. So always try to break the question and the result that is required into different parts of logic and try to implement them one by one. So that would be how you start off with coding, how you understand it, and then you keep practicing the same thing again and again over various platforms. Like I'm sure Abhijit also has a few ideas, like few different questions and platforms which he'll be sharing with you later. But this is what, from basic, very basic starting beginner point of view, is what I would suggest. So so in the starting, I would suggest not to go for really complicated questions and complicated solutions as well. It doesn't matter how big your code is in the starting, even if the the use case or requirement of the question is really small. Doesn't matter how big your code is, because you're just starting off your understanding. But as you move forward, you need to be able to achieve the same goal in smaller amount of code, because I'm sure at least the third or fourth years over here have some idea or have heard about time and space complexity. So basically, what happens whenever you're coding, all your tests are taken up on these random platforms where you're not only required to get the output correct, but you're also required to do it in a specific amount of time, and the code should only take a specific amount of memory. So consider the same example of number of vowels and consonants. If you can write the code in 10 lines, it's good. But the same code can be written in 100 lines also, and it won't be accepted, even though the output is the same. So when you're starting off, I would suggest not to break your head concerning to get it to as small as possible to make it work. But once you get a hang of how to code, how you can do it really fast, then I would suggest you look into how you can reduce the amount of code, reduce the amount of lines that are there, so that your program can run faster and better. Uh, and then a very important thing, some of the platforms. Now, this I was considering not telling this, but sometimes okay, placements gets really competitive, and sometimes there's a code question that you can't really get. Small trick I used to do. I would suggest it's up to you whether to use it or not. You generally have some inputs and some outputs. Uh, yes, I shall focus on that as well. Just give me a minute. Yeah, so as I was saying, let's say you don't get a particular code. All right. What I used to do is, you have a number of inputs and hidden outputs, and there are like 3 to 4 outputs that you can see. Worst case, you don't have time in the last 5 minutes, hard code the input to the output so that you at least pass 3 to 4 use cases. Might just help you clear the test. I have a question here. It says, can you please focus more on third year students as we have a placements coming up in the next week, please? Okay. So third year students, as I said, it's pretty much the same. Okay. Whichever language you know right now, I would suggest sticking to that and focusing on that language. Try to do a few complicated questions on platforms like HackerRank and HackerEarth, which I suggested. Generally, your placement questions will not be complicated, but I firmly believe that it involves a lot of luck. All right. I've seen, people sitting for the same test, some people getting really easy questions and some getting really difficult ones. So I'm not going to say that, it is always luck. It's just random, of course. But yeah, try to go to these platforms, HackerRank and HackerEarth, look up questions which are slightly complicated. Okay. I could. I think Abhijit has a set of questions which are so you can see those questions, and you can understand that the level of difficulty of the questions that will be asked in placements. Try to solve coding questions that are slightly more difficult than that on these platforms. So once you can do those, these questions should be pretty much easy for you. Um, that would be one of my suggestions. Second, try to set a strong time limit for yourself. When you start a question, I would suggest, I would recommend trying to solve it within 15 minutes, if possible. If it's a small question, if it's a big one, which includes lots of intricacies, keep it up to half an hour because that's the most you're going to get in any placement test. Trying to reduce your time to get the code done is very important. So once you fix your accuracy, I would suggest you concentrate towards speed, towards how fast you can do it. And then after that, it's the same thing. You for beginners or third years, coding is there's not much you can talk about the coding interviews because there is no specific rule that only these types of questions will come or only these things you need to work upon so that you'll clear it definitely. There are just general tips like these that we can give you, but all the practice and effort needs to be put on your end. And pray to God that you get easy questions. That's all I can say. I'm sorry if I'm being negative, but that's actually how placements are going to be. So I'm just trying to make you guys, prepare yourself in case, you get some difficult questions. And don't feel bad. From personal experience, I had like one of the first companies that came to for our placement was Endurance for a 14 lakh package. And I made it to the coding round and my system wasn't working. So I got 1 hour for a coding round, which everyone got 2 hours. And I didn't clear it, of course, because of that. So stuff like this will also happen, especially when everything is online and digital and stuff like that. So if it happens, I would just suggest, from a normal moral standpoint of view, don't take it to your heart. It was yeah, one good company went, but that's fine. You'll have many more coming up. So, just forget it and move on to the next. Keep practicing your coding as much as you can, and just hope for the best. That's all I could say for now. I think I can open up for questions now if anyone has any.
Yeah, so whoever has doubts, you can put up in the chat box and we'll convey the same to Ishan and you can answer all your queries.
Okay.
Let's wait for 2 minutes. If anyone has any doubts, you can put it up in chat box. Okay, so there's a question. What's the time gap between aptitude and next rounds?
Hello. Okay. Yeah, my net. I was having some net issues. Sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you properly.
Uh, okay. Yeah. So as I was saying, in maths, do you guys remember we had stuff like arithmetic progression and geometric progression? So my coding question was based on that literally, but it wasn't direct. Like they told me, consider this is the input, do this stuff, modify the input like this, and your output should be like this. Now, when you look at the input and output, you need to understand that this is an arithmetic progression. Remember that and try to just integrate that formula. One formula, 10 lines, my code was done. So I got lucky. I had an easy question. Some people have really difficult questions. So from my experience, I would say the difficulty of questions was okay, pretty medium. I wouldn't say really difficult. Please tell more about your placement experiences at college. Oh wow. If you guys ever meet Ambika ma'am, no, tell them that you took placement advice from me and she laughed at you. But yeah, jokes apart, placement experience was really good. I was the placement coordinator where everyone thinks we do work, but we actually used to sit outside the placement cell and play truth or dare. That was, but yeah. So thing is, I had an internship during the placements. Okay, I was interning in Dell. So I really didn't sit for that many companies because my internship was going on at the same time. I sat for like 4 to 5 companies, and the fifth company was AWS. So I didn't really have that much experience because I hardly sat for any company. But I'll tell you one thing: it is slightly nerve wracking. The interview, generally, the first 2 3 companies, uh, you'll be very nervous. Let's say that, censoring it, very nervous, and that's fine. It's the experience that matters, and is going to help you in the further companies. Time gap between aptitude and next round. Okay, so aptitude and next round. See, generally, aptitude round happens only on one day, and there's nothing after that. Generally, if you have a separate coding round, it will happen on the day of the interviews in the morning itself, or after the aptitude round. If it happens, you'll have like a 2 3 hour gap. Okay, so aptitude 2 3 hour gap coding round, or else aptitude and coding round on the day of the interview itself. And then after, your interviews will be, I mean, it's very random. The interviewers will call you, they'll interview you based on the number of candidates and number of interviews. Interviews can go up to a whole day from morning till evening 7 8, and also be prepared for that. which platform we have to stick like GSA or HackerRank. There is no specific platform to stick to. I just suggested these platforms because they are like, pretty much well-known platforms which have questions of various variety and difficulties. So you can get everything for your skill level from when you're starting off coding to when you're going to sit for placements. So if you have any other platform which you're comfortable with, you can go with that also. A few example coding questions you faced in interviews. All right, I don't really remember, but the geometric progression was one of those, as I said. Uh, one of them was pattern matching. Like they'll just give you a random sentence and you need to find a particular pattern. Now, the pattern can be either a vowel, consonant, vowel, or some specific letters, or, any punctuation marks and conjugation with letters. So there are different rules. So pattern matching is such. Sometimes they'll ask you to create patterns, like they'll give a pattern and they'll like create this. And sometimes it gets really bad. I'm pretty sure you guys, at least the third years, know about traveling salesmen and stuff like that. Yeah, sometimes they'll ask you questions that are that bad, and I mean, I don't know. I would just skip it, honestly. If you guys know, do it. Don't listen to me. But yeah, will we asked to code in particular language? No. So in the coding round, you generally have choice between C, C++, Java, Python. Because generally, I think there are a few more languages. I'm not sure. Some companies might not allow Python. I'm not sure. It depends on the platform they're using. So you could consider learning a little bit of Java also, but majority of them, like 95 to 96% of them, allow Python. So there's no particular language you need to code. It's whatever you're comfortable with. Can you speak about the companies you faced? Interviews variation. Okay. I faced companies, Endurance, Dell was for the internship, AWS, Gramner, Informatica, and I think that's it. See, yeah, so except Gramner, AWS, and which was the other one, Dell, I didn't do the aptitude round itself. So there's not much I can talk about those. If you clear the aptitude round, uh, it's basically your interviews, okay? The coding is pretty straightforward. Honestly, if I'm being honest, if you have three questions, one is difficult, the other two will be easy, and everyone will have something similar to that. So don't get disheartened if you see one difficult question that you can't do. Okay, your interviews are pretty much going to be very straightforward. They see your resume, they ask you stuff and questions based on your resume, what your interests are. So your resume is very important when you go for interviews. Always remember, if you're not confident about anything in your resume, don't include it. Because these people are really smart and they'll ask you questions and catch you if you're lying. So that, and your most important part about interviews is confidence. Okay, your knowledge is secondary. I'm not saying knowledge is not important, but it's secondary. Your confidence is most important. You smile in your interview, you be confident. If you don't know anything, say, I'm sorry, I don't know. That's it. And then answer everything as to the best of your capacity. And honestly, you should be good to go. But you need to prepare. I'll tell you, AWS was the only company that gave us stuff to prepare. All other companies' interviews are completely random. So all the core subjects that you have, like database, networking, all the stuff, just go through all the core concepts of that before you go for any interview and read up a little about the company. The people actually think that you reading and knowing about the company is for expression that you're interested in the company. So read up a little about the company before going for the interview, and it might just give you the extra edge. What happens in case a person solves a question in O in square and pass out test case, whereas the other person attends at 50% but has approached in a more optimal way? Uh, See, more than yeah, see, now that's a really nice question. Okay, so the question is what happens in a case a person solves a question in a larger time complexity and passes all test case, but other person that passes half the test cases in a more optimal way. Who do they select? Uh, See, so firstly, they don't really select only based on your coding. There are many other factors, as I said. But See, it's good that he saw. See, it's not a really big issue that he solved it in a more optimal way. Okay, if all your test case passed and the system accepted it, that means yours is also considered optimal compared to the baseline that's set. If yours was not optimal, even though the test cases are passing, it'll give you an error that it's taking too much time or it's taking too much memory, and your test cases won't pass anyway. So even if his is more optimal than yours, if you've passed all the test cases and your system is accepting it for all the time and space complexities, I mean, you you have much better advantage and much bigger advantage because you solved more test cases. Is it coding round and after at the same time? And after question the same for Ashay. So some companies have coding and aptitude rounds together. Some have coding rounds separately, and some don't have coding rounds at all. Um, aptitude questions are generally, yeah, aptitude questions are the same for all students. They'll just be in a different order to avoid people sitting next to each other copying. But now I don't know how they're going to do that. Coding also, sometimes if coding is part of the aptitude round, they have like a set of 10 to 20 coding questions, and you get any random two. But if it's a separate coding round, everyone will have the same coding questions no matter what. Is it true that expectation from freshers is very high as compared to your time? No, not really. See, any company will just expect you to know your basics because if you compare the syllabus that you're studying and what is actually going on in the industry, it's like you're living in 1960s. Okay, so the companies don't really expect you to know everything. If you know, it's well and good, but all they expect is that you know your basics, your concepts are strong, and you're willing to learn. That's all. So if you, as long as you're willing to learn, they are willing to, put their resources, time and money into you so that you become a good employee for them. That's it. So I would suggest not to stress about all the expectations. Just, study what you need to and go for it. That's it. According to you, what a good project that can be put on the resume. See, any project is a good project, okay? It's because it's something. It's better than nothing. But if you think that your project is too simple, just try to, hype it up when you're talking about it. Instead of talking about it in one line, just talk about it in 10 lines. Because the interviewer doesn't know what your project is. All he knows is what you're going to tell him. So try to hype it up a bit, just not to the extent that you can't answer any follow-up questions to it. So there are no good or bad projects. Any project you have, you can put it on there. What about communication? Is it high level or normal? See, there are two parts of communication that are considered of you. One is your vocabulary, your spoken English, and one is how well you're able to put across your point. Now, your spoken English and your vocabulary, I wouldn't say they give that much, importance to it. As long as they can understand you and you can understand them, it's good. But yeah, don't leave it at that bad of a level. But that's not as important as you being able to put your point across to them and them understanding it. Even if so, that is the most important part. Whatever you're talking, let's say they ask you a question and you know the whole concept, but if you're not able to tell it to them in a way that convinces them that you know the concept, it's pointless. So there's no communication level as such. It's just about how well you can put your point across. So I think placement cell generally, it organizes these mock interviews and all for you where they give you feedback. So I think you guys will have to check once with the placement cell if they're going to help you with that. They help you with all such soft skills and give you feedback on where you can improve. When we get a question, do we try to solve the question in optimal way or first try to brute force and check whether it accepts or gives a time error? Um, okay, so honestly, the first thing that comes to your mind, do it because you're always on a time crunch. If the first thing that comes to your mind is brute force and it works, I mean, well and good. You don't need to break your head. You go on to the next question. But if it doesn't work, you may have to spend some time to find an optimal way. But don't spend your time trying to think of different methods and then deciding which is the best because you don't have that luxury when it comes to placement. You're always on a time crunch, sometimes getting only 10 minutes for insanely and ridiculously big coding questions. So whatever comes to your mind first, I would suggest go with that. Or if you have the slight bit of idea about something other than brute force, you can afford to spend 2 3 minutes on it, but it's again a gamble, because if it doesn't work, I mean, in the last 2 minutes, you hardcore 3 4 outputs that you know, and get done with it. Mm, can we put ongoing projects which are not yet completed on the resumes? Ongoing meaning like your final year projects or your PBL projects? Um, you can put it. Yeah, you can put the project, and if they ask you, you can always tell that this is the amount of work that's completed and this is what's left. And if it's a really good project, I mean, they can get impressed. Yeah, so one part about your resume, which is important, as I was saying, let's say you have a project, okay, like a really fancy project. Uh, they'll ask you questions on it. It'll definitely give you an edge, a slight bit of edge, if the company is hiring for a similar role. Like you've done a full stack project and the company is hiring for full stack developer, that is going to definitely give you an edge. The same thing if you go for a testing role, but you have like a fancy development project, even though it's really good and the interviews is impressed, it's not going to give you any bit of edge. It might, based on how the interviewer feels, but if it's for the same role, it'll definitely give you an edge. So try to put your best projects forward. And if it's not as good as you think it should be, hype it up while talking about it. That's it. A very important part about interview is how you sell yourself to the interviewer. That's all. So practice that a bit. For DSA till trees is enough. For DSA till trees is enough for good CTC. Or what is DSA? I'm sorry. Can
Uh, DSA is like is data structure and applications. We study that subject in our third sem.
uh, okay, so okay, no, data structures is good for your technical part and interview part, but it see you need to study all those topics for your interviews. But there's no hard and fast rule that if you don't study, you'll get a low CTC, or if you study, you'll get a good CTC. It's nothing like that. Okay, last question. During interviews, it's necessary to explain brute force mode if you already know the efficient way. During interview, they won't ask you all that. Honestly, they won't ask you anything. This is all in the coding round where nobody's going to ask you anything. You get the question, you write the code, you run it, you submit. That's it. In interviews, they won't really see your code and ask you why you did this. Nothing. You clear the aptitude rounds and the coding rounds is only to shortlist people for the interviews. That's it. Once you're done with that, nobody even bothers you with any question regarding it. Okay, I think that was the end of the questions. So thank you, and I shall pass on the session to Abhijit. And if any of you have any more questions, you can get in touch. I told during technical round. No, see, your technical round, there's nowhere that you need to explain anything. If it works and it's accepted, it's done. It doesn't matter whether it was not optimal or optimal. So yeah, as I said, I'll pass on the session to Abhijit, and you guys can connect to me on offline if you need any help or need any advice. Thank you.
Uh, Thank you, Ishan. Like all your insights were very great and helpful, especially for the beginners who didn't even start or don't have an idea of how things happen during placement and how to start and off. So thank you. So let us have our next speaker. He's Mr. Abhijit. So can I have you on?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hi, can you hear me?
yeah, loud and clear.
Hi, Syed. Glad to be here.
Yeah,
Hi,
thank
guys. This is Abhijit here. I've been in BMSIT. I joined BMSIT at 2011 and I've graduated in 2015. Post that, I worked in Siemens for 2 years. After that, I did my master's in Triple IT Bangalore in data science. After that, I joined as a software developer in Tesco. So that's about me. So before I start this session, I just wanted to know, I completely agree with what Ishan said regarding mugging up your code. Trust me, when I started my microprocessors, I had to mug up all those 13 pieces of code just to clear it. But nonetheless, I'm not telling you to do the same. It is it is the wrong way to do your coding. So that's not how you do it. You should never mug your code, and you should always understand what's happening within this code and do it. So what Ishan said earlier was regarding your basics and how you should approach your coding and everything. I'm going a little bit in more detail regarding your complexities and how your 1 minute. I'll just share my screen. How your how you should code and what are some small cheat codes that you can use in your standard coding rounds. So your interviews will usually start with a certain set of either coding questions or a set of aptitude ones. Aptitude, there's really no saying where you can start from. You can just pick up any set of questions from your you can just find those questions for aptitude, but your coding questions, they are a little bit more like you have a lot more resources where you can refer it from. So I'll just start off with what exactly complexities are. So usually there are two types of complexities. One is space, the other is time. We don't worry much about space here because right now all the systems have pretty good memory and we try to focus more on time. So remember that big O notations that you studied back in second year? Yeah, that is very important here. So yeah, time is money because the faster your code is, the better is the response of your system, and the better paychecks is what you're gonna get if your code runs faster. So best practices of how do you optimize your code. So you should never try to, I mean, you if the code requires it, you have to do it, but try and avoid your nested for loops. Instead, keep your loops separated such that if you have a nested loop, then the order of complexity would be in order of n square. But if you have a subsequent set of loops, like one for loop after another, that's going to be just a 2n, so it's going to be an order of n. Your data structures is very important in when it comes to coding. You need to know how the internals of a data structure is working. For example, if you have a hash map or hash set, the insertion time taken is in the order of 1. The searching time in a hash map or a hash set is in the order of 1. So, but the searching time in an array is in the order of n or log n if it is sorted. So your data structures, your stacks, queues, hash maps, hash sets, dictionaries, all those things are very, very important when it comes to optimizing your code. Avoid recursion and use memorization. This is a pretty advanced topic. I'm not sure at your level you would be asked to code dynamic programming, but in case you do get asked, then I would say, I mean, if you have a lot of time in your hands, then go for this dynamic programming concepts, or else I would say stick to your normal basic questions. Uh, and the other cheat code, I heard someone ask a question like in the coding time, what if I have a n order of n square, so a brute force approach in my head, but I also have I feel this can be done a little faster. You're doubtful as to if your brute force approach will get accepted or not. So for that, I have a set of cheat code. So you carefully have to look at the constraints that are given in your problem statement. You can identify the moment you see the constraints, you should be able to identify what order, what complexity my code should run. For instance, I have this table here where if you see your input constraints in the order of, it should be less than 12, like the maximum number of inputs that they're going to give is 12. That means it's going to be a very complicated problem, or in the order of n factorial. But if you see a constraint where you have where your number of elements is in the order of 10 power 6, then you can use an n log n approach, like your basic sorting or something like that. So I've given certain examples also that can be used. So for example, your subset sum, you're finding all the subsets in this in your array size, that's in the order of 2 power n. And so these examples can, so looking at the complexity, you can identify what needs to be done. um, Hope this is a little clear. I understand I'm going a little bit fast, but if you have any questions, you can ask towards the end of the session, and I'd be happy to help you guys out from there. So going to the next one, let's just take a small example. Okay, I have this question. The only thing I have to do is I have an array of integers and I have a target with me. What my question wants me to do is I have to return two indexes that is equal to this sum. Okay. So the first thing I do is I'm not going to see this. I'm going to see and understand what needs to be done here, and I'm going to look at the constraints. So here the constraints is the number of elements in this array is going to range from 2 to 10 to the power of 4. So I'll just check my table again, and if it is 2 to 10 power 4, then this thing is going to take n square. So an n square solution would work in this case, and our IDE would accept this. Our coding platform would completely accept the solution of n square. But you never know. Okay, let's discuss the n square solution. What do you think is the possible solution for this? What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the first digit, take the second digit, sum it up, see if it's 9. If it is yes, then perfect. If it is not, then I'm going to take the first, then second, then first, and the last, and basically try to find all the possible combinations. And that's going to take n square. But surely this is not the optimal solution. So what can we do next? So the approach is, yeah, n square, basically whatever I've said right now. But can we go faster? What if they change the constraints to 10 power 6 or 10 power 8? So if we want to try to do it in n log n or in the order of n, these are set of things that you have to use. What if this array is sorted? What can you do in this case? I'm sure you all know the amount of time taken to sort an array is n log n. The fastest way you can sort your array is n log n. So that is going to be your most complicated procedure. So your entire algorithm would run within order of n log n. So once you sort it, your array is sorted. You can take two pointers, your starting pointer and your ending pointer. You add these two and see if it is greater or smaller than your target. If it is greater, if the sum is greater, reduce your right pointer and retain wherever your left pointer is. Do the same thing again. It is still greater than your target. Again, you're going to reduce here. And finally, once you add your 2 and 7, you get your target, and you can return the indexes 0 and 1. So this is a very simple explanation on how you can reduce your time complexity and um, beat that order of 10 power 6 solution. Oh, sorry, n log n solution. But yeah, we can definitely go faster than that. So I'm not sure if people are well versed with using hash maps and hash sets here, but I will be sharing these slides so that you can look at the solution which I've given here. I'm not going to waste time in explaining this entire solution. If you want, we can take it up later on. Okay. So coming to the more important questions now, how do we start coding? Like, uh, what time is too soon? Am I too late to start my questions or something like that? So I feel there are two ways to start. You start at the beginning of your year and you solve one problem every single day until your placement starts. But clearly for the third years, it's pretty late right now because you do not have that time. So you take about a month or 2 months before your interviews start and spend a lot of time, like at least 4 to 5 hours a day, because I'm sure you guys have to study your other subjects also if you guys study. uh, but yeah, you definitely need to have uh, dedicate some time to practice your coding challenges. And it is very important for you to have group discussions. Make the group very small, not more than 3 people in one group. Each of them solves their own set of questions, and if one of them has a very challenging question that can be shared with the group, you take that question, discuss with your group, find better ways to solve the problem, reduce your complexity and everything. So that way you're gonna uh, it's going to be more beneficial towards you because you will also be looking at the problem at different points of view. So that is one thing. The next one is, where do I start? Okay, there are like so many places where you can start your coding. I find HackerEarth and HackerRank good, but the problem is they have a lot of nonsense in their challenges because their questions will have a 3-page essay followed by one liner which can be replaced by a single line to solve the same question. You do not have the time to actually read through the grammar and understand what is happening. You just want to see directly to the question and see what the problem is and directly get into it. So that is how you start, and then you slowly pick up to your hacker and hacker earth questions, because you certainly need to understand what kind of questions they can ask. But if you want to directly get into uh, the question directly, I'd suggest LeetCode, Interview Bit, or Geeks for Geeks. Pick any one of them, and if you solve, I wouldn't say all the easy ones. There are about 1,000 questions on LeetCode, and I have done only 92 of them, and I'm placed, and I've cleared most of the coding crowns with just by solving 100 questions. That's it. Okay, and it's fine even if you're not able to solve any of the problems. If you can just go to any of the discussions page, and there'll be tons of places, tons of people who would have already solved the solution, and you can just understand how they have written it, and then you write the code on your own with your own self. So I'll just show you how LeetCode looks like. So this is LeetCode. There are about 1,000 problems here. You can pick any one. I picked the two-sum problem from LeetCode itself. Um, it shows me the question here. It shows me it's got a neat IDE as well. And yeah, you can pick up any of these languages. Majority of them use C++, Java, Python. You can use any of your languages, solve the question, and you can see in your discussions, there are a set of in-depth analysis as to like how you're solving these questions. They've got YouTube videos also in certain problems. So this is LeetCode. The second one I'd like to recommend is Interview Bit. This is how you literally, this is the place where I started my coding. I picked up problems from arrays, and they have a set of questions here. And this is a problem statement, and companies like DirectEye, Amazon, Goldman Sachs, it actually shows which companies have asked these questions in their interviews or their coding rounds. So this is very helpful if you're trying to start your preparation, guys. So I'd recommend this as well. You can pick any one of them, but don't do both. It's going to be just be a repetition of the things. And another advantage of LeetCode, what I see is you have a set of problems here, but you don't know which companies are there. There's a repo available, a coding question repository. Yeah, this is the cheat code I was talking about. All the companies and all the questions that they have asked. So let's go for Microsoft, Microsoft first year questions. Open this, and you're going to see all the kinds of questions that could be asked, and along with their LeetCode links. And I'd say if you do some of the easy and medium ones now, I think you're good to go. You'll be able to solve your coding round questions, because it's just going to be a small variant of what is given. Okay. Going to the next slide. Company specific preparation. So guys, Google is your best friend when it comes to company preparation, and Google about the company, understand what it's doing. And For example, when I gave my interview for Tesco, I understood that it's a retail company where it has to sell stuff. It's like Walmart for the UK. So if they are a store, they have to do some deliveries. And and I had done a project which would reduce the amount of time taken to do some deliveries, like traveling, reduce the amount of time spent in traveling. So I made sure I highlighted that project. I modified my resume according to the company's requirements, and made sure that would be asked during my interviews. And once they asked that question, I had booked them for 45 minutes. I kept talking about my project and told them that I've done this publication, blah, 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 this, that, this, that. Once I said that, they didn't have any more time to ask questions regarding other things. So they directly cleared that round for me. After that, they asked me an algorithmic question where I was ready, and I answered their question, and I got the job. So yeah, identify relevant projects that you have done which suits the company profile. So I'm sure not many of you would have done more than one or two projects, but out of those projects that you have done, try to keep the one which is more relevant towards the company, towards the in the top, and make sure the company has an attention towards that particular project. Also, there are certain sets of Facebook groups that are available, which will have a large discussions regarding what kind of questions were asked, for what kind of questions were asked during their placements when it came for a college visit. And this is not typically for your BMSIT guys. It can be any college in Bangalore or in India. Um, um, I'm not sure of the Facebook group, but when I was there was one Facebook group available. I'm not sure if it's still active or not. And lastly, Geeks for Geeks. I'm sure. Can you change the resonance of companies? I'll answer your question towards the end. I'll take it up towards the end. No worries. So check out Geeks for Geeks. There are a lot of blogs written regarding what kind of questions are asked in the previous companies. Most of the times, no, these companies repeat the same questions as last year, or if they have done any hackathon recently, make sure to participate in that hackathon and see what questions they have asked in that hackathon. Make sure you know that question when you are facing your interview, because you never know, they might ask the same question again. That actually happened for Tesco. They asked the same hackathon questions for our coding test. Yeah, can you beat that? Yeah. So another thing is, keep track of all the questions that you were asked in an interview. So now in BMSIT, I got placed pretty early, but in IIITB during my masters, I was somewhere in the middle level. So I had to face about 20 to 25 companies before cracking my company. So keeping a track of your questions that were asked was really helpful, because majority of the times the same question were asked to me. Your coding round, no, anything can be asked. Your coding round when you're coding, right? In the ID, anything can be asked. It could be an easy one or a difficult one. You never know. But if you clear it in your interview, it's only going to be the things from lead code, your Geeks for Geeks, and your interview bit, if they're going to ask coding questions. But it's not going to be hard ones as well. It's going to be very easy ones. For example, I was asked quick sort in some of the interviews. I was asked bubble sort. I was asked to find if a number is prime or not, find the nth prime number, those kind of problems. Your trees, I remember someone asking if trees can be asked. Yes, trees will be asked. Trust me, trees are not hard. It's very easy. It's just recursion. It's very easy. Just go through the questions that are there in lead code. You'll be able to solve them. Or interview bit. For example, they have a whole section for your trees. Backtracking is usually your trees. You're going to have trees and all here. You're going to find your subset problem and all those things. So if they're going to ask trees, it's mainly going to be traversals, like how do you do level order traversal, how do you do left order, in order, post order, all those kinds of things in trees. So that's about it. Yep. Let's get back to questions. Yeah. Hi guys. Let's see if there's any chat that is given. Okay. This is a good slide to screenshot. Thanks. Thanks, Bhargav. Can you share the link for the repo in the chat box? Yeah, sure, sure. I'll share all the material. I actually have another Excel sheet. Oh, wait, I'll just share my screen again. Sorry, guys. Hope you can see my screen. I have an Excel sheet. It's got the topic, the question, the Geeks for Geeks link, and if you have done yes or no, I'll be sharing this link with you guys. This is going to be your array matrix, your string manipulation concepts, your searching, sorting, your linked list kind of questions, your binary trees, binary search trees, greedy method, backtracking, stacks and queues, heaps, graphs, tries are not that important, trust me. Dynamic programming. This you can keep only some of them, like your coin problem, your knapsack problem. The other, the tougher, longest common subsequence, all those. I wouldn't recommend going through all of them. It's going to take a lot of time because each dynamic programming, for me, it took about a whole day to understand one single problem. And you're lastly bit manipulation. So I'll be sharing all of these things with you. Hopefully that should.
If anyone has any question, you can put it up in the chat box and they'll be answered. Abhijit, maybe you're on mute if you're trying to speak.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry.
No, it's
I was
fine.
on mute.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, so the first one is how can we change the resume with respect to company? So it's very important to do your background and go through the JD completely. See if what kind of roles they're looking for. Are they looking for any developer, a UI person, or a tester? If they're looking for a developer, they'll have a set of languages that they're looking for, either Java, C Sharp, Python, something like that. So if you have proficiency in any one of the languages, and I'm sure language proficiency is not at all important because when I joined when I did my coding, I was a Python developer in college, and then in my company, I'm doing Java because I literally had to learn Java in the company. So it really doesn't matter. Programming languages never matters. No one is going to test you on how well I know a particular programming language. But yeah, having experience certainly does help. Okay, so I'll take the next question. I'll share the repository. Yeah, even I loved my DSA sheet. It's very helpful. Hint about project, please. Okay. Um, I don't know what hint I can exactly give. Ideally, or finally, your project should be enough, but uh, never try to buy your projects from someone. I'm sure some people in my batch have definitely bought projects from elsewhere where they did project training and everything, and they were taught how that project was built. So never uh, include your, never buy your projects. Try to do them on your own. Find an interesting problem you can solve it. It's not going to be that difficult. Yeah. Okay. So when did I start practicing codes on a platform like Geeks for Geeks? 2 months before my coding, before my placements. Yeah, that's when I started. Before that, I never actually focused on coding. I I was more focused on my curriculum that was happening in college. But in BMSIT, trust me, I wish I had started sooner. We would have landed our direct I coding or else. Like seriously, we would have gotten our direct I jobs. It was that simple. I mean, if the same questions were asked right now to me, I would be like, okay, I would have been in direct I. So yeah, direct I and endurance, all those were like dream companies for us back then. Um, Yep, but considering the questions that were asked for us during that time, if I had known them now, then I would have been there. Next one is, do I need to know all the language for first round or anyone? Any one of them is fine. Where can we find the roles that the company is looking for? The JD that the company usually shares will contain this. You can ask Ambika ma'am, she would share this. Apart from that, you can also check out the careers page in the company that is coming and do some investigations
क्या
there. How are questions in technical interviews
ड्रॉ में
direct
क्या
like
है
lead code? Sorry?
क्या है sorry you can continue.
Yeah. Yeah. How are questions in technical interviews direct like read code or story in HackerRank? Yeah, there'll be story in HackerRank. Yeah, companies love stories. They're gonna add one Bob, Jill, or Mary in your questions and try to just deviate you from the topic. Um, Just today I solved a problem and it was very interesting. It was a very simple problem, but they had given me a 3-page essay to understand. It was just a problem that would have been solved in order of n. Yeah, so they're going to have these large problems. Please make sure you understand them completely before you solve them. How important are internships on resume? This is a tough question because internships are pretty relevant because you'll have some sort of company experience. But if you do not have your coding knowledge, like if you have not practiced your coding, then there's no point of having an internship because you would not clear your rounds. So you have to have your coding, I would say coding knowledge first, like make sure you can solve your codes, then internships. So if you have some sort of coding knowledge, then go ahead and do your internships, or else skip your internship and do your coding in practice. I have one in-office internship. Yeah, that is fine. That is fine, Vishnu. I think that is more than enough. What kind of projects, like any web development related? So web development related usually would be like they would look into how you have. I'm not really that much of a UI developer, so I'm not uh, sure about how you're going to design your front ends and everything. But in your backend, they're going to see about how it's going to be scaled, how it's going to, how fast your system is, how are you caching your things and all that. Uh, if you could talk about all of these in your interviews, that would help a lot. So that's what I would say. The next one is, let's say a company X hires an analyst role, but I don't have the knowledge of machine learning. Shall I still sit for that company? If yes, how to prepare for the same? This question is better answered by Bhargav. He would handle all your data science and data science questions because he's a machine learning guy. I specifically asked him to take a session for this so that machine learning people also can be beneficial during this talk. Do you think the lab programs we study are of much use in placements? Yes, definitely your programming, your quick sort, merge sort, your binary search, finding what is that? Finding if it's a prime number or not. Your traveling salesman no, traveling salesman. I don't think many people ask. Your KNAPS problem, your knapsack problem, your weighted knapsack problem, uh, longest common subsequent problem. All those are very important. Don't mug it up, never mug it up. Understand what is happening in the code and then do it. What are the core subjects to focus on for technical interviews? Okay, so system design. I don't know if you have system design. I have another repository which is available. I'll share that as well for your system design things. Basically, they're going to ask about about how you're going to scale your how you are going to scale your system, your reliability, availability, basically your caps problem. Uh, that is very important. Your system design is very important, and your algorithmic knowledge is also very important because how many other companies interviews I have faced, they have asked your first round would be coding, the second round would be a face-to-face coding where you have to write down the code, and the third round would be a system design where you build your system. Like they'll ask you a question, like they're going to ask you a very vague question. They'll ask you like, how do I build Facebook, or how do I build Counter Strike, or something like that. You have to explain your end-to-end details, like what's going to happen when I'm going to shoot this person, is going to go through the OSI model and all those things. Like you have to be in detail and tell how you're going to build that and how you're going to scale it. I don't want to study apti. Is it necessary for good product-based companies like Tesco and DirectEye? Um, uh, um, See, Tesco Direct, I never asked aptitude. I mean, I've never seen them ask aptitude. They mainly focus, your first round is mainly going to be on your coding. If you're going to target those tier 2 companies, which is going to pay more than 10 or 12, I would say you could skip, but not recommended for you to skip because there are some formulas that is there in apti. I mean, your apti is going to take just a day to prepare. It's not going to take much time. So just go through it. It's not going to be tough. Okay. Next one is if there is one quality that must stand out for interviews, what is it? Coding, knowledge on core subjects, or your personality? There is no one quality. It's it's all three. It's all three of them. You need to have some amount of coding knowledge. Core subjects is pretty important, but you won't be asked about it. I would say replace this core knowledge with your projects that you have actually done, and make sure you understand what is happening in each and every step of your projects. So that is very important. Your personality also matters a lot, but I really don't get how you should shake one person's hand and nod and smile. I don't get it. You should basically be confident in your talk and should not keep saying that too much. You just try to keep being in the flow. Can I add my NGO internship to my resume? First, check if it is relevant experience. You do not want to add NGO internships such as I have done pottery classes or I have donated. I've gone around donating clothes and all those things. If your NGO internship involves in adding a web development or some sort of development or something like that, then yes, definitely add that into your resume. What kind of projects could interviewers expect from ECE students? I'm not really sure about this. I don't think I'm the right person to explain for ECE guys, but maybe you guys can have another session for the ECE guys. Uh, Voluntary work with NGOs can be added as co-curricular. Yes, definitely. You can add them as co-curricular activities. But the other question said NGO internship. So internship, no. Activities, yes. Okay. So any other questions, guys? I mean, I'd happily share I happily share my slides and the my algorithm cheat book and the GitHub repository that I have. That should be of great help for you guys. Make sure you practice every day, at least one problem, and have those regular discussions. That's what I would say.
Okay, so thank you, Abhijit. Like all your insights on how to approach a problem, on how to solve the problems, and even showed as an example and all your cheat codes. And many thanks to you for that. So without taking much of all the audience's time, can we have a third and the last speaker on? Like, sorry, Srivastav Bhargav, sir.
Yeah, sure. Okay, first of all, I'll have to apologize a little. There's some construction noise going on in the background, which I cannot really stop. If it gets too annoying, please let me know. I'll try to do something about it.
Yeah, I don't think we can hear anything as of now.
Yeah, the drilling has temporarily stopped. He'll start, no problem.
Okay.
Okay, so yeah, let me get started. Hang on. Okay. Can you guys see my screen?
Yeah, it's in.
Okay, good. Okay, hi everybody. My name is Bhargav. I was also a student of BMS IT. Me and Abhijit were classmates. So we graduated in 2015 from the computer science department. And both of us went to Siemens Healthcare as developers. And from there, we decided that we want to study machine learning. So we both wrote GATE. And he went to Triple IT and I went to IISc here in Bangalore. So after I got my master's degree from the Indian Institute of Science, I joined IBM Research again in Bangalore. Now my job is to do machine learning and deep learning research. Okay, so that's about me. This portion of the talk will deal with how to prepare for data science interviews. We'll go from the very basics because I don't know if data science is covered at all in your curriculum. So we'll start with the basics. We'll find out what data science is, what a typical data scientist job looks like, where data science is applied in the industry, what skills you need, and how to pick them out. Okay, so what is data science? Simply put, data science is an interdisciplinary field that uses math and computer science to draw some actionable insights from the data. These insights could be very different in depending on the case. These insights are used to usually assist or sometimes even replace human decision making. The whole reason why data science has so much hype is because of this last statement that I made. It tries to automatically do what humans already do. So that means the companies will have to spend less human power on some problems and automate those things. And the more you automate, the more money you save, and the more they pay you for making that happen. Okay. In the industry, data science is used in several places. I've listed a bunch of examples here. For example, telecom, retail, finance, and social media, and so on. I'll just give a quick example in each domain. So in telecom, let's say you're running Airtel or V or something like that, and you see that all the time people are leaving and people are joining your company, and I mean people are buying your service, buying some service, not buying everything. You'll observe all such behavior. And the fundamental question is that what are the common characteristics of all the people who leave and go to a different operator? And the other question, the bigger question is that can we predict which customer is likely to leave? For example, if you see that some guy has taken prepaid, only recharges like 10 rupees a month, I mean, that guy might go at any time. So if you know who's leaving, then you can give them some offers and persuade them to stay. Okay, next up in retail, for example, Tesco, Walmart, Amazon, Flipkart, all of these guys, whoever has an online presence, everybody faces this problem. So given that a customer has previously purchased one or two products, let's say the guy has bought a gaming keyboard and a gaming mouse. And now the question is, can we predict what he wants to buy next so that we can advertise it to him so that he'll immediately click on it and buy it? So in this case, he's very likely to buy a high refresh rate monitor as well. So this is a classical problem of recommendation systems, and the recommender systems are very widely used. Next up is finance. Simple problem is that if some guy applies for a loan, your job is to automatically find out how much you can loan him safely. And this you can do based on his credit history, his income, and uh, his experience with previous loans. Okay. Then we're all familiar with social media. I think the main problem statement for social media people is that which content should I show each person next so that they're on the platform for as long as possible. So this is why Instagram rolled out a feature where you can scroll nonstop. Even though the content from your friends are over, it'll still show you other stuff, like you watch one dog video and they'll show you a million dog videos so that you'll never go. So as you see, data science is pretty much used everywhere. Wherever anything needs to be automated, or if some human-like judgment is required, then data science is the first thing that comes to mind. Okay, so what does a typical data science job look like? I mean, let's say you want to do any of these things which I've mentioned here. How would you go about solving? So I've listed 5 steps here, which more than steps, there are a sequence of activities which are performed to build a data science solution. The first step is to clearly define the problem, which means just very clearly articulate it. So you ask what the input is and what's the expected output and what are the constraints. So the constraint could be anything, like sometimes you'll need your solution to be extremely accurate. Sometimes you can compromise on accuracy, but it has to run really quickly. So you'll have some constraints, so you note them all down, keep that in mind. The next step is to collect the data, because there's no data science without the data. So you have to go get some data. The first question is, what data do you need? And that depends on your problem. So once you figure out what you need, you figure out how you can collect that much data. Then the third question is, do we need human annotation or do we need any kind of other processing? And again, this all depends on the problem. The third step is called data analysis. It's even called exploratory data analysis in some places. And here you just look at the data that you collected. You just try to get a feel for it. I mean, what patterns exist in the data? How much data do I have? Is it clean? Try to compute some statistics. Just look at the data, get your hands dirty. And then based on what you've done, you also find out a bunch of features. And these features are the ones that will help you train the machine learning model and do some predictions. Once you've identified your features, then comes the machine learning step. Here you try out several appropriate algorithms. There's not just one or two. For each problem, there might be several. You try all of them or whatever you find, whatever you see fit. And then you come up with evaluation metrics and evaluate each of the models and then pick the best one that suits your constraints. So once you have your model, then it's time to deploy it in the real world. And here you'll worry about productizing the code, like making APIs, making it robust, and also identifying the right infrastructure. So all these data science projects tend to be very compute heavy. So for some, you might need lots of GPUs, or you might need really good CPUs, maybe lots of RAM. So you identify all those things and deal with it in this step. Okay, next. I've put down a quick case study here so that we can see a concrete example of each of these steps. So you guys can pay special attention here because I actually faced this question in an interview that I had last year, I guess. So, okay, let's say you're running an e-commerce site like Amazon or Flipkart or anything like that. And on each product page, you will see that there will be several customer comments. And some guys will write really good comments that properly list down the pros and cons of the product, whereas others will just write two characters. They'll say okay and give a 3-star rating. Now you want to show the most useful comments first so that it will help potential buyers make their decision. I mean, you want all the comments that say okay and give 3 stars, you want to put them in the end. So you can't simply write an if else program to solve this thing. So bring in data science. Okay, so to define the problem, again, we know that our input will be a list of comments and our output should be the same comments, but they should be sorted from the most useful to the least useful. That's the problem statement. Next thing is to go and collect the data. Now, since the e-commerce site is our own, we have free access and we can use any data that we need. So we can write a bunch of queries and get a very big list of comments. Now, in order to teach the machine which comment is useful and which comment is not, you'll also need some labeled data. By that, I mean you might need some 500 or let's say 1000, 2000 comments. And with each of those comments, you'll also have an annotation saying, is this comment useful or not? Now, getting this annotation is usually the costly part. You can either pay some people to do it. There are several companies that do it, or you can be creative and put a like button next to the comment. So the customers who come to the site can actually click like if the comment is helpful, and that's your annotation. So now that you've got your training set, now you go to the analysis part, and here you try to find out the characteristics of the useful and useless comments. So you try doing the task yourself. So read a comment and try to decide if this comment is useful or not for this product. Now, by doing this activity, you'll notice several things. For example, you'll find that one-word comments are useless, or you'll find that extremely polarized comments can also be useless because some people just hate Apple, and so every iPhone they'll give low rating, or there will be Apple fanboys who simply give high rating. So all this can happen. So while doing your analysis, you will find out such things. And then once you have your training data set and once you made these features, you go do machine learning, pick the best algorithm, and then deploy it. So if you become a data scientist, this will be your typical job. This whole activity might last for several months. So the product management team will come up with a problem statement for you. And then you define the problem and build a solution and then deploy it. And this is not like a waterfall setup where you do the deployment and you walk away from it. It's more of an iterative development. So after you deploy, you might again go back and like refine all the steps in one more round. Okay, so if you have to do this job, you need to have some technical skills. And I've listed those here. So for problem definition and data collection, you definitely need domain knowledge. I mean, the problems in retail and finance could be completely different. Then for data analysis, you'll mostly be playing around with the data. I mean, you might have tables, might have to make plots, read a bunch of files, and do all that. So for that, the typical tools that we use I've listed here. So you need Python. That's like the de facto data science language. If you are dealing with matrices, then there is NumPy. If you want to do linear algebra or anything of that sort, there is SciPy. For dealing with tables, there is Pandas. And if you want to do plotting, there are so many libraries like Matplotlib, Seaborn, and so on. So this will get you through. Coming to the machine learning part, here is where you need to know a mix of theory and uh, practical stuff. So you'll definitely need to know linear algebra, probabilities, and machine learning algorithm, several algorithms. This is the theory side. So this stuff will actually help you decide which algorithm you want to use. And then once you've decided that, if you want to implement those algorithms, there are other very good libraries like scikit-learn, PyTorch, or TensorFlow, and such things. Sorry. On the deployment side, you will usually have to learn REST APIs, Docker, Kubernetes, and so on. Now this is a big pipeline and it has a lot of skills, and there are actually people specialized to perform each of these activities. For entry level data science job, you are expected to know data analysis and machine learning, and mostly the ML part. So the skills that I've put in bold are the most important, and that's where you should focus your attention. You can completely forget about the deployment and data collection and problem definition. Completely screw that. Okay, so now I guess you guys know what is required, but yeah, let's see some more details about what to study. So I've split this into three groups. One is the fundamentals, which is the math. So you will have to study linear algebra and probability. There is absolutely no way that you can escape this. You have to know the stuff to understand machine learning. Um, Otherwise, it will be like learning to program, but you don't even know how to type. So it's that comparison. Okay, so I don't know how familiar you guys are with linear algebra and probability. I think most of you would have heard probability, but you guys really need to dig deep and understand it well. So for studying these, I highly recommend starting with linear algebra. And there is a fantastic YouTube channel called 3 Blue 1 Brown. He makes really, really good animations, and he'll teach you everything about linear algebra in a very intuitive way. So you can sort of visually see what is going on when you multiply two matrices or you compute the determinant or when you go to take an inverse. Um, it's like very top quality content. So I highly recommend starting there. Next for probability, there is another YouTube channel called StatQuest. That is also quite nice. And these guys are not very rigorous in their explanation. It's more of intuitive understanding. So after you watched a bunch of videos from this, then I recommend studying uh, from a book because book is more rigorous. So you can do mathematics for machine learning or part one from the deep learning book. Both of these books are freely available ebooks and they're quite nice. I've used them myself. So once you know the math, then you go to the machine learning stuff. I like this course called mlcourse.ai. It's the guy goes into the right depth in both theory and practice. It's a fantastic course. I highly recommend completing that. If you want to learn deep learning, there are several videos on Coursera and YouTube. But there's this very nice book called the Deep Learning Book. It's written by Ian Goodfellow, Bengio, and others. Very good book. And also, you can do any course from Coursera and Udacity. It will cover fundamental machine learning, maybe computer vision, and also NLP. On the software side, you'll have to learn a bunch of things, but these have really good documentation. So you can just like literally read the documentation and understand what to do. And also Google search will give you several tutorials. Okay, so now that you know what to study, you should also know how to study because there is literally too much and it's not something that you can do in 1 week or 1 month. It will take a lot of time. It will take consistent effort of anywhere between 6 months to 1 year to even understand the basics. And that applies if you're already good at programming. So if you can't write good programs, then you should start with what Ishan and Abhijit said. So first you become good at coding, and then you start with the data science stuff. So this is not basic stuff. So obviously there are prerequisites. So again, start by studying linear algebra and probability. Make sure you master the fundamentals and then move on. Then do a basic ML course. I cited several resources in the previous slides. Solve the assignments and quizzes very seriously and get some experience in implementing different algorithms. So once you do a basic ML course and you know what's out there, then you get some hands-on experience by doing some Kaggle competitions. Or you can pick up projects from anywhere else because many universities maintain open course pages for their machine learning course. And there they would have given good assignments and projects. So you can even go ahead and replicate those. And based on what project you choose, and this will be a good time to also pick up some computer vision and NLP skills. And while you go to do the assignments, you'll also learn all the required tools. So yeah, it will take time, guys. I won't lie to you and tell you that you can learn this in 1 week. It's not like that. I took a lot of time too, and that's the case for everybody. If you're really interested in this, then just put the effort and stay curious, and it will help you learn. I've got another meta tip for getting data science job. Um, and that is to do a master's degree at a really nice university. Even if you can't go abroad if you can't go abroad to MIT, it's completely fine. You can aim to do a master's in any of the top 10 institutes in India. IISc, IIITs, and IITs are really good, and master's degree will make it very easy for you to get data science jobs. Yeah, okay. So coming to the data science interview structure, there will be several rounds of interviews. Each of those rounds will focus on one of these different areas. So usually the first round will focus on the breadth of your knowledge. So the companies want you to have a broad understanding of machine learning. I mean, at least know a little bit of everything. And by little bit, I mean sufficient for you to apply them. So that will usually be the first round, and here they can ask you anything. I mean, starting from linear regression to then linear algebra, probability, like simple classification algorithms, and bias variance trade-off, and so on. The second round will typically be depth of knowledge. So here the interviewer will ask you what you're good at. In my case, I will say I'm good at NLP. So they will start asking you machine learning techniques and NLP techniques based on what you just said. And this might go into a lot of depth, and this is where a hands-on experience will be very useful. And the third kind of round, they'll ask you to talk about your projects. So yeah, this is another very good reason to do a lot of projects. So here it's like they won't ask questions, but you present your projects. So you say, this was my problem statement. I analyzed it this way, used so and so techniques for these reasons, and here is how I evaluated. So yeah, it's basically you telling them what you did and why you did certain things. And this is very important. Okay, if you do quality projects, the interviewers will be convinced that you actually know machine learning and you know what you're talking about, and you're not just bluffing. So projects are super useful. So keep that in mind. The fourth kind of round is a design round. Here you will be given a very vague problem statement and you'll be asked to solve it using data science. And okay, so this case study which I gave was asked as a part of the design round. So the problem statement which I got, I have pretty much written that down exactly here. And based on this vague statement, you'll have to you have to ask them for clarifications, and you have to clearly articulate it and go and build a solution. Now, they don't expect you to be 100% correct in these things because most of the time designing such systems is difficult. I mean, even experienced people take months to do this. So all they're checking is that do you know how to design data science solutions and how creative you are and how good your fundamental knowledge is. I mean, to summarize, they just want to see your thought process. So this is the typical interview structure. Now, I did not include any resource which has a list of machine learning interview questions, because you can find that very easily by doing Google search. There are several blogs and Medium articles which have enormous list of questions. So you can just look that up. It's very easy to find, so I didn't put it here. Um, okay, yeah, that's the end of my presentation. I can take questions now.
If anybody has any questions, then you can please ask them right now. And after this, we'll have one more Q&A session wherein you can throw your questions on either of the speaker.
Okay, there's a question which says, which platform would be good to do ML projects? Okay. So unlike competitive coding, there is no platform where you can do, I don't think there is any platform where you can upload your ML solutions. But like I said, Kaggle is a good place to start. So they give you problem statements and they also give you the data. Your job will be to clean the data and build features and apply machine learning to solve the problem. And you can also submit your models and they will evaluate it on their hidden test set. So it even has a leaderboard and all that. So I think it will give you the proper data science exposure. There are also very simple problems like that. I think there is a Titanic data set. So based on some features, you will be asked to predict who will get rescued when the Titanic starts sinking. Something of that sort. So there are very simple projects there which are meant to onboard people to ML. So I would recommend you start with those. And I guess there are even YouTube solutions explaining what to do. So yeah, Kaggle would be a very good place to start. If you want to jump into the ocean in a way, then several good top universities like Stanford, MITs have open courseware, and even our own Indian guys have like IISc and IIT, and yeah, pretty much every IIT and IISc will have machine learning courses, and they will have public course pages. So there they will upload all the slides and videos and also their assignments and projects. So you can also pick up stuff to do from there. And I think that's a good idea. So start very simple, like maybe for starters, it's a very typical project. So they'll give you a bunch of information about a house. Let's say they'll say how big the house is in square feet, how many rooms it has, how many bathrooms, what the flooring is like, how old the house is, which locality it is in, and your job is to predict the price of the house. So that's like the Hello World program in machine learning. So I think that's a good place to start. You'll typically apply linear regression or any regression technique to predict the house price. That's a good place to start. And yeah, I think once you start doing an ML course online, maybe on Coursera or somewhere, they themselves will give you some assignments and problems. So do those well. Okay, can you share some tips on GATE exam? Okay, GATE exam preparation. Okay. Um, there, yeah, there are a lot of tips, I guess. So the first big tip
You
is
need another session for that, I guess, Bhargav.
yeah, I think yes,
Oh, yeah,
yeah.
but go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, me and Abhijit prepared for GATE while we were working. So one thing we did was we started very early. So it's not something that you can study for 3 months and expect to get first rank. So we both started 1 year early, okay, and we had planned before that. So we started 1 year early, and so I think okay, I'll shamelessly tell one tip. My favorite tip is that go join a coaching institution. Not because it'll teach you magic, but they will tell you exactly what to study and how much of it to study. And that's the job of get coaching people. Okay, it's not like they'll teach you super well and all. So suppose you have some subject like algorithms, they will properly tell you by analyzing previous papers that look, these topics have higher probability of being asked. So, and then all you have to do is follow their advice, study like hell. Okay, like it will take one full year. So me and Abhijit used to do our job for 5 days a week, and we used to spend the entire weekend studying, and we did this for one whole year. It wasn't easy, but in the end, it worked out. So, favorite tip is that you start early, join coaching, and be very, very consistent. So, even if you spend two hours a day, that's completely fine. I mean, I spent only 2 hours per day, but it happened for 1 year. And solve all the previous papers. So, I think I have solved more than 1,000 problems for GATE. It's a massive effort. It's not easy. And I think there's a really good Facebook group called GATE CSE. It's for computer science, but they have like very top class advice and tips there. There are also some guys on YouTube who will give you good advice. So yeah, I think I'll have to stop there. And okay, next question is: are we asked to speak out the formula for algorithm like using gradient descent? Yeah, no, you'll have to, you'll have to know the formula. You'll have to know how to make the formula. You should know how the gradient descent formula came. So you need to know it inside out. Okay. So for linear regression, I mean, the assumption is just simple that you're assuming that there is a linear relationship between the features and the target. So that's why you do a W transpose X kind of thing. But then yeah, you have to know everything. The formula isn't sufficient. In this whole field, guys, it's like there is no like memorization takes a backseat. Like you should be able to derive things on the fly. I mean, so you should be able to derive the gradient descent equation. If I give you any function like you should optimize let's say ax plus b, like find the best values of a and b. So you'll have to be able to write a gradient descent step for this. So you compute the partial derivatives and then you write the update step. So you will have to know it inside out, like knowing the formula and or knowing just knowing which scikit-learn formula to call isn't sufficient. You need to have in-depth knowledge. Um, okay, I have to make one point. See, data science jobs are not like other entry-level jobs. First of all, they're actually in a different plane. And I'm not saying this in a way to belittle software development jobs. Software development jobs are also very I mean they require a lot of skills. um, I'm talking about those jobs which will offer you like 25 lakhs an annum or 30 lakhs per annum. So those are the kind of things that you need to aim for. It may not happen in 6 months or 1 year, but yeah, given time you'll be able to do it. So these kind of companies expect a lot. Okay, so they're paying you that much, and nobody pays for free. So it's like they expect you to do three people's job by taking three people's salary. So that's how it is. So you need to know it inside out, and you have to be very familiar with everything you say. So yeah, just go in depth. You have to be curious and like ask questions. So one thing I did was that when I was studying probability and linear algebra, like any fact you see or any fact you read, let's say you read some rule about probability, like start asking why. I mean, why is this rule correct? How did this rule come? And like keep asking whys. Ask like three, four whys. So that will like take you to first principles, which is the axioms of probability. So you keep asking why and go till that level. So that will guarantee very strong understanding. Okay, next question. As you told, interviews look for good quality ML projects for data science. Can you explain what good quality projects we can make as freshers? Yeah, this is a bit hard question to answer. Okay, typically, see what happened in IISc is that the machine learning course itself has a project. So the project is part of your course. Maybe like 30% of the grade is coming from the final exam. The other 30% is coming from the assignments. And then the remaining part will come from a project. So we could actually put those projects in our resume if they turned out to be good. But if you don't have any machine learning course in your college, then yeah, then I think you go back to Kaggle and try some problems there. There's also another way to sell yourself as a. Oh, sorry, video's off. There's another way to market your skills as a data scientist, and you can do it on Kaggle. So, like HackerRank and LeetCode, there are also leaderboards on Kaggle. So, if you solve a lot of problems and you get a lot of points, it starts showing up in the leaderboard. And Kaggle also gives you title like Grandmaster and so on. So, if you say I'm a Kaggle Grandmaster, then people know that you really know data science. So, yeah, just start off with simple projects and move on to slightly non-trivial ones. It's little difficult to describe what non-trivial is in this case, but non-trivial is something that is more complicated than an assignment or a course project or anything of that sort. So yeah, like next level complexity. Okay, I think I have answered all the questions. If you have got some more, please feel free to type.
Okay, so thank you, sir. Like, I guess all the data science geeks have all like know how to start and what's the process and how to approach and all the insights you gave, and probably you answered all the questions like very well and very great. If anyone else has any question to any of our speaker, then they can put in the chat box, and you can even mention the name of the speaker you want the question to be.
Okay, hang on just 1 second. I think people will want to screenshot the slide, so I'll just give a couple of minutes so that people
Yeah,
can click a.
or else maybe you can even share this slide if it's possible with me, so that we can have all these slides sent it to all the participants.
Yeah, I think I can share the slides, no problem. Cool.
Guys, so the recording of this session will be uploaded on our YouTube channel, and all the links and all the PPTs of this session will be uploaded in its description. So you guys can check out our YouTube channel. It's by name BMS IT Media, and all the slides will be uploaded in the description box. Like the link will be there. If anyone has any questions to any of the speaker, then you can put it up in the chat box and they'll be answered. We'll wait for 2 minutes. If anyone has any questions, then or else we can just wrap it up.
So AWS has its own cloud associate certificate. So if you want a cloud associate job in AWS, you'd rather do the AWS solutions architect or any cloud related certification, which is done by AWS and is AWS specific, as it would have more weightage. If you do Google Cloud certification, it's easier to get a job in Google Cloud than AWS Cloud, is what I'd say, because the courses are really, service and company specific.
I see someone has asked one question. Do certifications from HackerRank hold value? Unless it's a certificate which shows that I've cracking the coding interview certificate, that doesn't count much. But if your certification has some important, if it shows that you have done some level of coding, like it shows that you have solved all the easy questions of HackerRank, then yes, certainly add that. Another very good plus point is if you have your rank of Code Chef. If you want to go into competitive coding, for instance, then getting a good rank in Code Chef and Code Forces is definitely going to be helpful. If you really want to go into competitive programming, then ACM ICPC that should be your goal. At least get into the regionals. And trust me, guys, if you get into the regionals, your pay would be the companies would be begging to hire you, and your pays would be in the scale of 20 plus. Okay, so that should be your target, but trust me, it's very hard. I couldn't clear it myself. But getting these Code Chef ranks and solving some problems from Code Forces is definitely going to be plus point. The next one is I'll definitely share the GitHub resources to everyone. I'll share with the guys. If there's anything else also, you can always reach out on LinkedIn or I'll share my email also. You can post a mail. We can have a talk whenever you guys want.
So I don't think there are any more questions, so we can wrap this session. Thank you everyone for joining in, and thank you for all the speakers for agreeing to do this session on a very short notice. And I hope all of the students, all of the audience have learned a lot after today's sessions, and we'll definitely try to have such sessions even in the next month and coming months. We'll try to integrate everything. So yeah, thank you everyone for joining in today, and stay safe and have a good evening.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much.